closer mentality. I'm your host, Julia Mellett. I hope you had an amazing holiday season. As we transition into 2022, I wanted to use this episode to talk about one of the most taboo topics this time of year. Yep, New Year's resolutions. Take a second to think about the person you were at this point in 2020, inundated with COVID-19 protocol, trying to spend time with family and friends, or conversely, quarantining. What did you hope that 2021 would bring? Continued success, or a well-needed reprieve? Did that happen? Chances are, it didn't. The guests I bring on this podcast have been through unique life and sport experiences, but the one thing that unites them is how they handle adversity. When a pitch is missed or a goal gets scored, what's the next step? Both mentally and physically, adversity is what athletes use to push themselves towards success, whatever that success means. In the event that the game plan goes haywire or a piece of the meticulously crafted puzzle falls flat, what's the next emotional step? For those well accustomed to dealing with things going wrong, it's easier to plan out goals with the acknowledgement that they won't come to fruition the intended way. New Year's resolutions work similarly. But when structure is at the forefront of goal setting, those goals are doomed to fail. It doesn't matter what the goal is either. It could be superimposed on work, on school, on advancing friendships or relationships. Structure is the enemy of progress. As I was researching for this episode, I decided to do a bit of a deep dive into the psychology behind New Year's resolutions, and why the majority of them don't stand the test of time. A 2017 study from Cornell and the University of Chicago found that 55.2% of resolutions were health-based, 34.4% were work-related, and 5.2% were goals pertaining to social scenarios. What researchers Caitlin Woolley and Eilert Fishbaugh saw stand out was that success in goal setting stemmed very little from the perceived importance of task completion. Those became destinations. Only enjoyment-based resolutions were stuck to with any degree of longevity, and thus, the more enjoyable a person could make a task, the more likely it was to be completed with persistence. Professor Seppo Isoahala from UMD's Department of Kinesiology notes that fitness resolutions are the most cast-aside resolutions because improvement depends on structuring leisure time. For those who prioritize leisure as relaxation, cutting into that time with effort seems like a terrible fit. Pinning leisure time allotment against exercise requires that a person chooses one or the other. For those who don't view working out as a leisure activity, there's a disconnect, which leads to resolution failure. He points out that goal acquisition has a great deal to do with changing 4 categories of behaviors: regular exercise, smoking habits, caloric intake, and alcohol use. For collegiate and elite athletes, these goals are not most applicable for obvious reason. The work athletes do every day is exercise. Leisure time is spent with performance improvement in mind. Identifying as an athlete is a lifestyle, not just a full-time job. Professor Isoahala suggests that in order to begin viewing exercise as leisure activity for the masses, a person must first dispel reality and attribute working out as a forced choice. Maybe it's as simple as small changes that make the environment more conducive to exercise. Maybe it's more of a mental redistribution of direction. When in the day is time the least specifically allotted? Early morning? Lunch? After dinner? It's a personal choice, but the time that the person might spend scrolling through social media could easily be redistributed into goal-achieving behavior. It's a conscious choice, though, and that's where the breakdown is. When exercise becomes a habit, a person will begin to yearn for their own betterment. Once a habit forms, physical resolutions are more likely to stick and stay long-term. The 2017 study also found that resolutions are more likely to stick when the goal setting is connected to an ability to perceive change. Physicality-related goals are notorious for small changes, and thus get cast off after a few weeks of diligent gym membership doesn't change the scale. In order for resolutions to become habits, a shift in perspective is required. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was a six-pack of ripped abs. Boosting exercise doesn't need to mean sprints or 10-mile runs. Start off by upping miles walked. Your joints will thank you as well. Low-impact sports like tennis and walking a golf course are perfect options to ease back into a regular exercise regimen. Find joy in the low-impact exercises, and with time, those small changes will culminate into a lifestyle shift. More broadly, though, Why do those who set resolutions tailor them to lifestyle changes doomed to get cast aside by February? A 2002 study from the Journal of Clinical Psychology found that about half of all adults make at least a single New Year's resolution, yet fewer than 10% keep up with them for more than a few months. A 2020 study, though, found that during a one-year follow-up, 55% of the participants had been successful in reaching their resolutions. So why the discrepancy? Those with approach-oriented goals were significantly more successful in goal achievement than those who had set avoidance-oriented goals. Approach orientation includes resolutions tailored to things like weight loss, mental health, personal finances, and work. Objects that, in order to get better at, need to be faced head-on. Avoidance-oriented goals, such as alcohol and tobacco use, or more broadly, cutting down on procrastination time, were significantly less likely to stick 12 months in. Relapses occurred and the plans were thrown off track. Furthermore, any time that self-blame and self-efficacy issues entered the mental arena, avoidant goals were reevaluated. In fact, slip-ups and reevaluations were actually par for the course for both groups. 53% of the successful group admitted to slipping up on the road to change at least once over the course of a year. Skipping a week at the gym is alright. You still have 51 others. Eating a hearty helping of cake while celebrating a friend's birthday party isn't going to derail the sanctity of a diet plan. Self-improvement isn't a linear process, and that's fine. What also helped stick to approach-related resolutions was that each participant was solely focused on a single goal. It wasn't a conversation of, I'll change this and this and this, and then I'll finally be a better version of myself. In fact, muddying the water with too many resolutions dramatically decreases the success rate of all of them. Resolutions, as with all lifestyle changes, work best when focused on. Attempting to lose weight while being a better communicator and fostering an improved work-life balance seems overwhelming when they all get lumped together. That's because they are. It's a new year, but you're the same you, and you know exactly what you can handle. But if you've ever had trouble handling what you're going through, or if your resolutions are being sidelined by your mental approach, I have the perfect way to work through that roadblock. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, and I'm so thrilled to be working with them for another episode. Is there something interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals, and even looking forward to your 2022 resolutions? Nearly all of my guests thus far have utilized either a sports psychologist or a therapist to align their goals with their capabilities. Now, I'm bringing that option to you, the listeners. If you've ever listened to a Closer Mentality episode and thought, I feel exactly the same way, I've partnered with BetterHelp to bring online therapy to your phone and computer. BetterHelp offers video, phone, and live chat options, and you can speak to a licensed therapist in less than 48 hours. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. BetterHelp has more than 20,000 licensed therapists around the country, and you have access to them at any time. You can get thoughtful messages from your therapist, and if you aren't happy, it's free to change providers. If you're worried about the cost of traditional talk therapy, BetterHelp also plans for that. They offer financial aid if funding is the only thing standing between you and getting the help you need. Join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. I have a special offer for all Closer Mentality listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/closer mentality. That's betterhelp.com/closer mentality. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. The link is also in the show notes. Now, let's get back to it. If making a resolution elicits a visceral reaction from you, shift the lens through which you view success. A New Year's resolution is the exact same process as getting out of bed and brushing your teeth every morning. Spend a minute every day doing it, and it becomes less of a hurdle and more of a box on the daily self-care checklist. Another way to delineate long-term goals into smaller-scale achievements is to put them into two distinct boxes. Consider a physical goal like running a quicker 40. A football player doesn't wake up one day and suddenly get faster. Running a faster sprint is an outcome goal. The process of goal achievement, in this case, is a series of small actionable changes, or behavioral goals. Being able to lift more or push a sled further are both outcome goals, whereas being able to lift 275 pounds on the way to lifting 300 is a behavioral goal. Building up endurance to run a marathon first requires running 1 mile, then 2 and 3 and 25. You can't cross the finish line 26.2 miles away without running the first mile. Think of behavioral goals as akin to stepping stones toward the final outcome. Training for mile 1 is just as much a behavioral goal as getting through 24 with ease. Think of something you want to accomplish during 2022. It could be anything. Think huge scale or minor adjustment. Okay, do you have your resolution in mind? Now make note of at least 3 things you can do either today or over the next few days to tangibly set yourself up for success in that period of goal acquisition. Now go even further. Visualize yourself completing these behavioral goals. It didn't take much time to see yourself completing these steps, did it? Half an hour a day or 2 a week. The frequency of behavioral goals is arbitrary, but tied to the kind of resolution you're attempting to complete. Tailor the steps to get there to your schedule. When can you carve out time to work toward that success? Nearly all New Year's resolutions are built upon small daily changes that eventually amount to the intended result. Large-scale resolutions are meant to be achieved by the conclusion of the year, not the first week of January. Slow down and plan a general timeline. Keep in mind, though, that the timeline is subject to change and should function more as a roadmap than distinct directions. Be kind to yourself. Being persistent is key. If it helps, keep a resolution journal. On the first page, write your resolution. I want to run faster. I want to get a promotion. I want to lose weight. I want to earn a starting position on my team. Dedicate even 30 minutes a week to tracking your progress. Accountability, or lack thereof, is a major reason the New Year's resolutions fall flat. The goals are too lofty. Aspects seem too intimidating. Journaling about the, at times, menial sides of working toward your goal can help keep you on track and focused, especially in instances when improvement seems stalled. A Dominican university study found that those who keep their goals to themselves and don't write them down only had a 35% chance of following through to goal completion. Be patient and keep chipping away. You'll reach every peg of the ladder and you'll begin to enjoy the journey. That's one part of goal acquisition that athletes do incredibly well. The most elite athletes don't beat themselves up when improvements are small. 2-time world champion 400-meter hurdler Karsten Wahlholm once said that, quote, "I'm not afraid to get beaten, but I'm afraid to not improve." Long jumper Abigail Irazuru once said that she doesn't like waiting until January 1st to plan out her goals. Quote, "For me, I feel like I should make changes as and when I find them, rather than waiting for January 1. Although January 1st does seem like a clean break, starting a new goal or resolution in February or October doesn't diminish its ability to alter the course of your life. If you think you'll become a better version of yourself once it's done, call it what it is. It's not a New Year's resolution. It's a life-changing habit. Be the best version of you every day. Don't just start with the ringing in of the new year. You don't need January 1st's permission to start changing your life. But with that being said, what are your resolutions or goals for 2022? I'd love to hear them. Send us a DM on Instagram @CloserMental and hold yourself accountable. The Dominican University study actually found that those who conceptualized their resolutions by writing them down or sharing with a trusted confidant dramatically increased their odds of completing the journey. More than 70% of those polled achieved their goals that way. That's an enormous amount, and a tried and true method. Maybe it'll work for you. If you found anything I spoke about today helpful or applicable, I'd love to hear your feedback. There's a survey in the show notes, and it would mean a lot if you would complete it. I want to keep creating content like this and bringing amazing speakers on to help influence and inform your life. But to do that, I want to know who you'd like to hear from and what topics you'd enjoy diving into. Thanks so much. That's the end of episode 47 of Closer Mentality. As always, I'm your host, Julia Mellett. Have a lovely new year, and I'll see you next week.